Okay, so I think we can start. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Anagha Muralidharan from Proteus, the Biology Club of IISER TVM. Today, the 11th of February, is the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. A significant gender gap has persisted through the years in all levels of science disciplines across the world. Even though women have made tremendous progress towards increasing their participation in higher education, they are often underrepresented in this field. So, in order to achieve full and equal access for women and girls, increase their participation in science, and further achieve gender equality, the United Nations General Assembly declared 11th February as the International Day of Women and Girls in Science in the year 2015. So, on this occasion, we bring to you a panel of scientists from our very own School of Biology to discuss our theme, Strides of Women in Science. I welcome my panel for today, and I would like you to introduce yourself to our audience. I'd like to start with Professor Hema.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Hema Somanathan from the School of Biology. I'm an ecologist by training, and I work on the behavioral ecology of bees largely, and also social spiders. And my lab is also interested in trying to understand plant-animal interactions. We use a combination of field biology as well as behavioral experiments in the laboratory to ask and answer some of the questions in these fields. And I've been a part of the School of Biology for the last 11 years. So I joined in 2009. So I was one of the earliest faculty members in the School of Biology.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Nisha, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Nisha N Kannan from School of Biology. I'm a chronobiologist, and my research interest is to understand how an organism adapts with the environmental day-night cycles. For example, in nature, for more than 3.6 billion years, the light-dark cycle or the day-night cycles are going on. And this day-night cycle imposed tremendous selection pressure on organism to come up with an endogenous timekeeping system. This timekeeping system helps the organism to anticipate when it is going to be worked on, such that it can synchronize its activity, and it helps the organism to adapt with the environment. But this benefit of the circadian timing system is not only restricted to the activity, it even reaches to the physiology and metabolism, indicating the importance of this biological clock. My interest is to understand how an organism synchronizes with the external light-dark cycle, and why the circadian clock evolved in organisms, and how it operates. What is the genetic, molecular, and neuronal basis of the circadian clock? I'm also interested to understand, why do we sleep? What is the functional relevance of sleep? To this end, I used Drosophila as a model organism, and I joined IISER TVM in 2015. I completed 6 years at IISER TVM. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Dr. Poonam.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Poonam Thakur. I am a neurobiologist by training. I have done my PhD from Punjab University. And at that time, since that time, I have been working on Parkinson's disease, which is a neurodegenerative disorder that affects a particular set of neurons in brain, and as a result, leads to problem with motor abilities in elderly people. And to understand the pathology of the disease, I work with mouse models that we generate in the lab. So my research focuses on developing better models of the disease that will have a better predictive value for testing therapeutics, as well as finding the molecular causes of the disease. And the ultimate goal that we work towards is to find some therapeutics for this disease, for which currently no cures exist. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. And lastly, Dr. Sandrea, if you could. Dr. Sandrea, are you with us? She did mention she has some connectivity issues. So. Dr. Sandrea, are you with us? Okay, I think we can wait on her. Until then, we can start since we're short of time. So, the first question that I had, which I wanted to ask everybody in the panel, was what is a question or a topic that you feel has been asked too much concerning women in science? Uh, if any of you could begin.
Excuse me, am I audible?
Yes.
So, the one question that I've heard is
Um,
how do you manage your family and your professional field if you're into science?
right. So, I skipped mentioning
Hello?
this, but I was. Hello, ma'am. Yes, we had lost your connection. No. Uh, yeah. In this minute, I'd like to say I'd forgot to
Can you hear?
mention, but hello, Dr. Sandrea. Uh, hello, ma'am. Can you hear us? Um, something I wanted to say to the audience was that we will make this session interactive and we'll address the audiences in intervals. So until then, if you have a question for the panel, please put it in the chat box. But kindly keep yourselves on mute so we have a more smooth panel. Dr. Sandrea, are you with us? Right. So while we wait on her, maybe we could go around the panel, starting with Dr. Poonam. What is one question that you feel has been asked too much in the topic of women in science?
I think Tejasvi already actually mentioned this question.
Hello?
Yes.
So it's always this, work-life balance, this and that. Like men also have family. Those children also belong to some men. They are never asked this question. Why is it only a woman's headache to manage this thing? Is something that is very surprising to me.
Yes, very true. Do any of our panelists have anything else on their mind regarding this question?
So I think that's a question that a lot of us get asked all the time. For example, is it important for you to be working so hard? Right? So, and do you need to continue working so hard, though you are now a professor? Do you still continue to be working so hard? So that's something which, a lot of us face this question. I mean, we are asked this question as to, why don't you take it a bit easy? Don't work so hard. So that is something which I don't think anybody will tell a man, right? Because of this traditional role of men as breadwinners. So it's never questioned when they work hard or when they spend extra hours at work or when they, are working from home. So in fact, the entire machinery around the house will conspire to make it convenient, to permit the man to work really hard. Okay, so but that doesn't really, happen in the case of women. You get asked as to why do you need to really work so hard.
Right. It's a thought I had, Professor Hema, is you had taken a class for me in the first semester where you had told about the biological value of a male versus a female. And I remember that analogy very clearly because I remember thinking when so much of energy of a male is and so much of energy in nature is put towards the female, why in our society it has to be the way that women have to put in so much energy to be considered the same as a man. But that is the thought I did have. But another question we have, this is from Ira from batch 19, which Dr. Nisha, if you could take up, is when you observe your undergraduate students now, do you feel like things have improved for women and girls compared to your undergraduate days or your younger days?
Yeah. If I compare the undergraduate students of at present, let's say from IISER TVM and from my batch, let it be around 20 years ago, during that time there were no interdisciplinary education. For example, we were studying the traditional biology courses. At that time, probably we were not aware of the fact that there is biased approach towards women in science. But nowadays, look at you, you already have an opportunity to discuss about it. You are already aware of it, that in future you may face this gender bias once you are in science. That opportunity was not there, at least for me. Maybe for others it was there. And that was one thing I feel. And moreover, even now, the India developed a lot, but still I feel that question is there for how long you are going to study, especially girls. After a few years, when are you going to get married? They never ask when are you going to get a job in science, when are you going to get married? This is the question that girls faces. Maybe nowadays you have better exposure so that you can tackle these obstacles, or you can consider it as challenges and you can go ahead better and shape up your future in science.
I do agree that being aware of the situation itself is a huge privilege that we have as a generation. But as always, it's due to all the generations before us that we're here now. That's another theme that we tried to keep for this panel, is that we acknowledge how far we have come in this journey. But we can move on to our next question, which is which I think Dr. Poonam you could address, is what is something that you have done or you intend to do in the future in your labs to make the space more inclusive for everybody?
First of all, I would like to mention that it should not be the burden of females to make the places inclusive. Exclusion is done by males most of the time. So this thing should be shared by them, or actually majorly carried out by them. So, it's already women have to work almost twice as hard as men to prove themselves to be at least equal to men, and to make their space in all these boys' club and everything else. Okay, and on top of that, to carry on the burden to make places equitable and inviting and inclusive to everyone should not be solely put on women. That's a very wrong expectation of it. It would have been actually really nice if a male was sitting here and they would tell what are they doing to address this thing. Okay, but what I do in my own thing is that I make sure that in my lab, as much as possible, I would have a 50-50 representation of both the genders. It's sometimes not always in your control, but I try as much as possible. And also that, everyone is treated with as much respect and equality, and irrespective of their gender or their status or whatever it is. I think even this, once we offer basic human decency to our colleagues, it isn't really that big of a challenge, actually.
That is truly something that me and a friend of mine had discussed just this evening, that our panel has only women and we don't think it's right. But again, it's always a question of, should we compensate for the voices that weren't represented, or should we move towards equality? But I truly agree with your point that it would be refreshing to hear a man's perspective on this situation. Thank you for pointing that out to us too. But
If I may add over here,
yes, ma'am.
if I may add over here, I had the exact same thought when I saw the composition of the panel, that it would have been really nice to have, say, 6 men on this panel and ask them questions like, how is it that your life is so well arranged that it allows you to work on weekends, Saturdays, and Sundays? What is it about your, we want to know as women, we would like to know how is it that your life is arranged that allows you to be so productive and you're so unruffled all the time and everything. You can very easily take a decision to stay back in the lab till 9 p.m, work, and then go back home and then come back the next day without showing any signs of fatigue or anything of that sort. How is all of that possible? I would really like to hear this from my male colleagues.
Yes, ma'am. This is definitely something that I will take up upon myself to bring up some more men in science to address this. But
I once told one of my colleagues that I wish I had a wife like yours. Yeah.
but yes. So another question that we have, which I found interesting, which maybe Hema ma'am you could start with, is have you noticed any practice or any experience you've had in another field or another institute that you think that more scientific spaces should implement and should do to promote more equality in their spaces?
Yeah, maybe Poonam or Nisha, do you want to go?
Nisha, would you like to chip in? Okay, maybe I'll add just one point. It isn't particularly from another field, but I spent my postdoc years in Sweden, and they had one policy that I really liked, which was that when a child is born, it's not called as maternity leave, it's called as parental leave. Okay? And both parents take. So it's a 1 year total parental leave that they get, and both fathers and mothers take 6 months each off work. And after child is 1 year old, the state guarantees a childcare spot in the daycare center nearest to their homes or their workplaces. It's a guaranteed spot. It's not that you have to struggle and find something far away or something. It's a guaranteed spot that you will get so that you could return to work. And you could choose to not split it equally, but in that case, your salary would be cut. If you split it equally between both parents, then you both will continue to get your full salary. So I think I like that policy quite a lot because, yeah, it's weird that, yeah, men get 15 days of parental leave here and women can get so many months. But if they were more hands-on with their children right after they were born, things would be looking quite different, I think.
Right, Prabha. So one of the thoughts I had on this topic was that many newer companies have been introducing the idea of period leaves for their female employees because it cuts into their sick days. And I found that to be quite an interesting and an inclusive act on their part. But yes, your point is very true, and it is a very nice practice. So,
Let me
yes,
add
ma'am.
one point. Yeah. For
Yes.
example, when we are recruiting people, we never consider the age bar for females. I mean, it is equal age bar for both males and females. But females have a lot of career break when they take care of their family, and in order to balance between work and family, they compromise a lot of years for their career and for their education. I feel at least for women we should give a little bit more time. The age bar could be different for both males and females in institutions.
That is another question I had, which is open to everybody, is that how well received are taking breaks in your career, and how does taking a gap really impact your career in the short term and the long term?
Yeah, for me, uh, at least in my case now, I have taken a 6 month long leave, and it really impacts the research progress. But one thing is that girls or women who already completed their education and they're settled with a job, maternity leave is still okay. You can still continue your work. But those who don't have a job and they have a long career break, after that, getting back to science is really difficult for women. This is what I. And those who already have a job, it is not easy for them to balance between work and family life. It really impacts their career progress, research progress.
Anyone else?
Yes, so I would agree with what Nisha said, that if you take a break in science, it's very difficult to come back to the lab. If you take you take a break for personal reasons, family reasons, child care, and all of that, it's going to hit your productivity, and then you can never sort of, everything else being equal, you can never be competitive as your male colleagues. So there is no allowance that is given to that, even in the HEI, higher education institutions. So of course things are somewhat slowly changing, I would say, a little bit, but a lot more needs to be done. It's almost certain that if you take a break, your career as an academician is over. So yeah, so that's the hard truth, I guess. It's almost certain. But then speaking for myself, I had to take a break for personal reasons that I don't want to get into. But I was fortunate to have come back to academia. But this is not something that you would hear a lot of people saying. Yeah.
It's understandable. But yeah, it's a very true, harsh reality that we have to face. Um, so another question we have, which is from Samyukta Anand from batch 21, and she asks, if you have felt any insecurities about what you have done, how did you push through and gain self-confidence? I think she means in terms of your achievements. How did you have the confidence to put yourself out there and continue looking for opportunities? So, Poonam ma'am, if you would like to begin.
Actually, I would say this question itself comes up with this bias that women are, would naturally be underconfident, would not have a lot of leadership abilities, cannot put themselves first, and someday something has to happen and it has to be instilled into them, and it has to be taught into them. But it's not considered somehow that they can be born as confident as men. They could have no issues with their self-esteem and things like that, and there should not be any extra needs for any of this to happen. They could just be as naturally confident as men. In fact, opposite happens. You're all born equal. You are all born that, and then you are instilled to behave certain way, and then you're shaped to hold back your opinions or mince your words, or be collegial and that. So all that stuff is actually what robs you of that confidence. And if you can push through that, then you don't have need for proving anything to anyone. And it shouldn't be taken that women should be with low confidence, and one day it has to show up. I personally never felt underconfident, and neither have I ever given it a second thought that I have to do something to prove myself anything to anyone. Everything is just, I'm confident enough in myself for what I do. And I believe a lot of my female colleagues are that. And they're confident and they're strong. We are not living our lives to prove things to others.
That is truly nice to hear, ma'am. It is, again, like I've seen many girls my generation be very strong and very confident, and I don't think this bias is still true. I think we are moving towards not conditioning our girls to be, frail and timid, and it's a very good point. Women can be as confident as men, and that shouldn't ever be a question. Um, Moving on, we have a question from Tarun Kishwar Yumnan, who is a PhD from Batch 18. Uh, I will be posting the question in the chat box just because it is a long one, but I shall read it out also. So the ratio of female faculties in most institutes in India is skewed. Uh, this person has been kind enough to give us a few percentages, but all are below 20 in IISERTs. And what are the main reasons for such skewed faculty ratios, which can be addressed in the short term, that is within the next 5 years, and in the long term of the next 10 and 20 years?
I think, in the short term or in the long term, I think the measures that one has to take are somewhat similar. First of all, I think you ensure that you give due consideration for breaks. And if there is somewhat lower productivity because of that, you take that into account when you hire faculty, and don't just look at the number of publications or this unit called whatever productivity per unit time. Don't just look at time, but also look at how people have spent that time. What have they done? So I think those kind of measures definitely will help to improve this ratio in a lot of higher education institutions. Don't have such, I think, the hard and fast age limits for applying at, say, the assistant professor level or something like that. So don't be very hard on those rules. So some flexibility there is going to go a long way. Allow people who have taken breaks plan for their careers. Essentially what you have today is that you have a lot of these fellowships and schemes which are like contract positions, 5 years, and then there is no planning for the career beyond that period for a woman who goes in for one of those fellowships. So, but there has to be a clear path. If you've taken a break, and then what are the ways in which you can come back to the lab? So such thinking, I think definitely it's happening in other countries. People are taking proactive measures, say in Europe, for instance. And you do find women, coming back to the lab after a break. And there is an active effort to go all out and get such people. Because first of all, you have to value that women bring certain, things or they bring certain value, which, you won't get in an all male department or mostly male department. So first of all, you have to realize that. But if you go by the usual metrics of what impact factor and how many papers per year and all of that, you're not going to be able to improve this ratio. So I think these are the measures where, if you want to really improve participation of women, and then once the faculty is there, then of course, it's really useful to have proper daycare, creche facilities. Like the example of Sweden, it's doing very well in terms of women in academia. And that's because of the social support system. We almost have nothing like that. So these are all larger societal problems. I don't think institutions alone can solve that. But yeah, every measure, is going to have some effect in improving the participation of women in research. Yeah.
Right. So, ma'am, while you brought up grants, fellowships, I think it would be really helpful for the people in the audience to know uh, of any grants or scholarships catering to women in science that have helped better lab environments.
Just specifically for women, I think SERB has something called Women of Science. These are meant for people who've taken a career break and want to come back to the lab. So that's there. And then I can't think offhand. I think there are a bunch of other schemes. Offhand, I can't think of it. But I can think of, I mean, like this Woman of Science is one of those fellowships in India. Yeah.
Women of Science from BBT as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
DST also has a couple of women
DST, yes.
scientist schemes meant for different levels of break and age thing. And SERP has last year launched Power Grants or Power Fellowships that are also exclusive for women. So there are, yeah, a few of them now.
That is great. So I think we can move on to an interesting question that we received, which was this is from Siddharth Shivanandan from batch 17, and he says he was interested to understand the perspective towards the evolution of social media in pushing towards inculcating more women in STEM and keeping women in STEM. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for our audience. And yes, the evolution of social media and how it has helped. If any of you could take it, Dr. Nisha, maybe.
I'm not really qualified to comment on that because I'm barely in social media, but maybe Poonam or Nisha can comment here.
Yeah, maybe social media gave us more awareness about opportunities, so that, for example, about this power grant or about other DST SERP grant, we have in social media, we have such groups where we are updated about the deadline of each grant, so that we get more opportunity to apply for such opportunities. Not only for the faculty, even for students, they get more awareness about applications for PhD or for postdoc. That might have helped a lot for women to get more clarity about the opportunities they have.
I would also like to add into that point. In one way that social media has really helped is it has become a very useful tool to call out bad behavior actually. And that is something that has really changed over last few years. Earlier, people could get away by doing things which were full of bias or giving such comments, but now things get called out. So I would specifically take example of Bias Watch India. So what they do is like they call out all the manuals. So you see a lot of these conferences, invited talks, these awards and whatnot. And you see the pictures and posters and it's like full of men. So even if there are 20 speakers, they would all 20 be men. And that happens far more than 50% of the times. So they call them out. And sometimes the organizers listen to them and they have actually gone back and changed and improved their ratio of male versus female speakers or representatives and all. So not everyone responds kindly, but in some instances I have seen that happen, that people have actually realized and changed that. So that's definitely one good thing about it. Another thing I am noticing is that especially in cases of when institutes or sometimes not just, and this is not a problem specific to India, it's all over academia that, you know, very gross sexual harassment or misconduct that happens, and sometimes institutes try to hush it up because some big people are involved. Things get called out on social media, institutes are pressurized to take action, and I don't know the details of everything and all that, but in many cases it has forced institutes to take action and, you know, act in a more responsible manner about those issues or allegations.
That is great. Also, something I'd like to bring up is that all of you on the panel being on social media is also a huge inspiration for younger students like us. Especially faculties who are very active on social media. There are many young students who follow you and really look up to you. And even like hearing about you in the news has been immensely inspirational to some of us. So that's something I'd like to bring up. So a question that's just come in from one of our team members, which is what makes something like computer science, a hard science, and sociology or biomedical sciences, a soft science. The number of women participating in these fields are often a little more towards those that are labeled softer, and there are some gender stereotypes that exist that affect people's perception of these fields. So have you ever heard something like this about the field of biology, and how do you feel about it? Maybe we can start with Professor Hema and go around. Ma'am, you are on mute.
I haven't really come across that kind of a statement that biology is soft and computer science is hard science. But what I have perhaps heard is that men should study subjects that will land them jobs. Okay, so biology, being harder to get jobs in biology, and not as much as say computer science or something like that, or electrical engineering. So wouldn't be the natural choice for a man. I haven't really heard about soft science versus hard science kind of thing, but this I've heard, that sort of, at least my times, implying that women can sort of take it easy, take up fields of study that don't necessarily have to lead to jobs, so that kind of thing perhaps was there. And within the field of biology, because I am a field biologist and a lot of my career was built on field biology studies, so I would say that, yeah, there were some issues about me going off into the field for long durations of time, to remote, far-flung corners, which, people would ask me, how do your parents allow you to do that? Or how does your family allow you to do that later? So this is something that they would not ask a male colleague, a male ecologist. Yeah. But in my experience, I mean, like, I've felt that in some of these areas, I was never asked by the locals in that area, the tribals in that area. They never asked me that, why are you here being a woman? So these stereotypes about, urban meaning more developed or, more open-minded, for me, it broke down right there, because they never asked me this question as to what will your family do without you if you're roaming around in the jungles like this. They did not ask me that. But many of the city people, okay, men and women, would ask me this question. Relatives, friends, ask me this question as to how can you go away for so long? That kind of thing.
Would anyone else like to address this question? So maybe we could move to the next question, which I think Professor Hema brought up slightly, but would you like to correct any misconceptions about working in science? Something that many people have told you or you've heard from many people, but you have found wrong or different. Dr. Poonam or Nisha, ma'am, Dr. Nisha.
One concern for most of the students after completing their masters, the concern they have is PhD takes 5 years time. After that, postdoc again takes several years. Is it a suitable career for females or women? It may delay their family responsibilities. These are some of the concerns generally girls have when they decide to pursue career in science. I would say it's okay if you delay your family life for a few years. You're doing something work if you're following your passion for science. So never hesitate to get into science. If you are passionate about science, pursue your dream. Never think about other social barriers that you're facing. This is what I
Very true. Poonam Thakur.
Yeah, I would like, irrespective of gender lens here, I would like to add in that I think, especially on social media circles, it's like, everywhere all you see is like how difficult it is to do a PhD, how miserable your life will be when you are doing PhD, and how much work you have to put in during PhD and all. And I find that narrative somehow so biased and so not true because, PhD is a part of your life and your career is also part of your life. And you can totally have some more things to your life. And it is actually healthy and natural to have something more to your life. And it's totally possible to keep your other passions alive, your hobbies alive, and whatever you like to do. And without any negative effects on your career. I kept alive everything I did, every single extracurricular thing that was there to do throughout my scientific career, and I don't think it any ways affected it. So this whole thing of just burning yourself out while doing research and running it like a sprint is something I think it's a misconception. You don't have to do it like that. With little bit of planning, little bit of thorough thinking, you can really plan your marathon and enjoy your life while still doing research. It's totally possible.
That's great. So something I'd like to bring up here is something great that I have found about our institute is that I was warned a lot about not leaving my hostel after dinner time or like staying safe and keeping my boundaries with people. But something lovely about our institute has been that it is very safe. It has managed to be very safe for female students and all students, and it has given me the opportunity to do so much, and that's something lovely that I'd like to bring up when I have this opportunity. So, yes, this is this is a question that I had. This is a thought I had that I don't know if it is the case, but I am very curious to pick your minds. Is what unique qualities do you think a female PI or a female professor brings to the table in an institute? We can start with Professor Hema.
I think it's a little, according to me, I think that's a little difficult to sort of generalize because there can be, I don't, because not all women are alike. Everyone has their own style of functioning and they have their own ideas about what works well and what doesn't work well. So I'm not really sure that, but in general, from my experience, I mean, I've worked with all kinds of women supervisors. I've worked with people who have very different styles of functioning. So I'm not really sure that I can really comment on this, that there is, this is what a woman PI or a female PI would, sort of bring to the table. So just like, humans are, every human is different, right? Every human being is different. Each man is different, each woman is also different. So it really depends on personalities, I think, to a large extent. But maybe women are more willing to see students as not just students, but that they have lives of their own, and they have aspirations, and they have a life outside the PhD. So perhaps that probably comes from the fact that women are also juggling a lot of things, which, like I at the outset I was saying, that the man has a very defined, narrow, sort of one-dimensional role of what he's expected to do, but as women we do multiple things. So but however, I would also like to use this a little bit of caution here, that there is this thing that's generated that women are very good at multitasking, okay, and there is also this myth that's generated that men can't multitask. Okay, that actually I think brings a lot of burden on women, whether it's in the home front or whether it's in the institutional front. Okay, so I think it places just too many expectations, and I think then the work or the the workload is not evenly balanced. So that's also something that one should watch out for. Yeah.
Do any of our other panelists have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with Hema's opinion that women, they understand the relationships better. Instead of commanding, probably women can inspire students better, I feel. And they, instead of commanding, they guide them, and probably women listen better to students, and in some situations we listen to the opinions as well in decision making, so that the team building is better if women representation is there. This is what I think.
I would like to add in one comment here. I think one should not expect women to bring in anything, different from their male colleagues to the table. Whatever they are bringing, confidence, leadership, science, training, mentorship, everything women bring to table, right? They can't be lacking on any of these things and still be successful enough. So to expect them to bring anything extra is an unfair burden, as Hema pointed out. And this notion, I know the underlying current is that they should somehow be more lovely, warm, motherly, this and that, compassionate, this and that. But I think that's an unfair expectation on women to fit into those defined roles, because everyone is a different person, and it isn't really their job to bring these qualities to the workplace. They are as much as responsible for just bringing the professional qualities that you would expect all men to bring to the table. And if everyone manages their expectations around that, it would reduce a lot of this extra burden that they're supposed to carry, or extra work, because they can multitask, or they can be more empathetic to this and that. That can be actually reduced.
That is very true, ma'am. That is something that we all should have in mind. One thing about achieving equality is also letting everybody be the individual that they are and free them from the sort of box that we want to fit people into, men, women, whatever be it. So that is a very valid point, and I have loved all your comments. Since it's 7:50, I would like to ask my last question, which is again, this goes out to the whole panel, which is, what is your number one piece of advice for a student starting in science, or for a student having a tough time in science?
My number one advice to female students, and I say female students especially, is not to cow down to social pressures. That social expectation can come from your home, it can come from your peer group, but you don't have to be what you don't want to be. So don't cow down to social expectations. That I think this we've been taught for generations that we have to conform to a certain role. That is not necessary. You should be free to do what you want to do. Yeah, so that's my advice to young students who want to get into science, that just be what you are and do what you want. Don't carry this whole burden of social expectation. It's hard because we've been conditioned, right? It's hard, it's not easy, but you'll be a lot happier down the line.
Yeah. For a man, achieving the goal in science is much easier. They may not have much social barrier to reach there, but for women, there will be a lot of obstacles or challenges to reach there, but never get discouraged with that. If you continue to achieve your goal, definitely you will reach there. Never get discouraged by others, irrespective of whether it is your parents, your neighbors, or the society. Just don't listen to it, follow your passion.
Yeah, I would add in that, especially for females, but also in general, number one, there are a lot of systemic barriers and difficulties inherent to this career because it's long and requires a lot of moves, this and that. But still enjoy the process. It really, it's the lens with which you see it, because it's also an opportunity to explore so much new, the joy of discovery. Don't get marred down into that this is only difficult. There is so much still to be enjoyed in that. Really focus on that, and life will be happier. And second thing is, choose, especially for females, choose your battles wisely. You will face this something pretty much on a daily basis, maybe 10 times a day. But engaging with everything takes away your energy, bogs you down, wears you down. Sometimes you have to fight back, but sometimes you have to preserve yourself and ignore things because you want to preserve yourself. So just choose wisely where to ignore, where to fight.
Yeah, also Dr. Sandrea, I am so sorry, but we haven't been able to connect with you. I think my team has also tried reaching out to you, but are you with us? I think her connectivity does not permit her to join this talk. But yes, I have exhausted all my questions, and I would just like to say that I am very thankful for all of you attending the panel. It has truly made me rethink some of my notions, and that is something that I am really grateful for, and I'm pretty sure many people in our audience are also grateful for. Um, it has given us an insight into what science looks like from the lens of someone much more senior to us. And we look forward to playing our roles in making science a more inclusive place. So I'm very thankful for having this great conversation. I would also like to thank everyone who sent in their questions and everyone who has attended to make this event a success. Further, I would like to thank our faculty advisor, Dr. Sadananda, and the School of Biology for providing us with their continued guidance and support. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I can leave now, right?